Hello, we're going to take notes on 10.2b, factoring trinomials with two variables. Instead of filling in the blanks right here, I'm going to show you how to factor trinomials using something called the Kim trick. So you can kind of ignore that right there. So I'll show you the Kim trick using these two examples right here. Just one thing to think about when using the Kim trick is it has to be a trinomial to be able to use the Kim trick. The Kim trick will not work unless it is a trinomial. So the first step in doing this is checking to see if you can factor out a GCF. So looking at what we have in our trinomial here, there is no GCF to factor out. So our second step in the Kim trick is taking your leading coefficient and multiplying it by the last term. So when we do that, we end up with x squared minus 5xy minus 24y squared. The second step in the Kim trick is finding the combinations of when you multiply two numbers that would give you the last term, and the same two numbers when I add, I would get the middle term. Sometimes to help me to find the right combination, I write down the factors of 24. So like 6 and 4, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, and looking for what's the right combination when I add or subtract these to get -5 in this circumstance. So the example that would make this true is 3 and 8. But remember to look at your signs to get a -5 when I add together, the 8 has to be negative. And that's also true for the -24. So the next step in the Kim trick is taking it and writing it in two sets of parentheses. So whatever variable is here, that goes as our first term, and the numbers we found go in the second term. So this would be plus 3. Now we also have a y squared here, so we have to be cautious of that. So to get that back, the y has to go in the second term. And the same in the second parentheses, minus 8. And we also have to have a y there to get the y squared. So our next step in the Kim trick is whatever your original leading coefficient was, you have to bring that back and divide it by each one of the numbers you found for your combination. And then you want to reduce these fractions if possible. So in this case, this would be x plus 1/4, y reduces to 1/4. And then the 8/12 reduces to 2/3. If the fraction reduces and you still have a denominator number, that goes in front of the variable in the same parentheses. So that would be 4x plus 1y. In the second one, you bring the 3 in front of the variable in the second parentheses, 3x minus 2y. And these would be the factors of that trinomial. Now, of course, you can always check by foiling to see if you get back the same trinomial from the beginning. Okay, so let's practice the Kim trick with the second example. So step number 1, check to see if you can factor out a GCF, which in this case we cannot. Step number 2, take the leading coefficient and multiply it by the last term. So that would give me x squared minus 17xy plus 60y squared. Our next step is we're looking for the combination. So something times something would give me positive 60. And the same two numbers, when I add together, I get my middle term, which is negative 17. So again, just like we did before, you can write out the combinations for 60 and see which ones, when you add or subtract, you would get negative 17. So if you want to try to write those down, you can stop the video and try it on your own first to see if you can write the right combinations. Okay, so let's see if we get the same thing. I got minus 5 and minus 12. Minus 5 times minus 12 gives me positive 60. Minus 5 plus minus 12 gives me negative 17. So let's take a look at how this would look. X minus 5. Oh, don't forget your y. Almost forgot my y there. And x minus 12y, because we have the y squared there. Okay, so the next step in the Kim trick is go back to your original leading coefficient and divide each one of these numbers by that. And let's reduce it. So 5 6 can't be reduced, so we just leave it as 5 over 6, and we'll deal with that later. And then 12 over 6 does reduce to 2. So in this combination, there's still a denominator, and so that's going to go in front in the same parenthesis, so it'll be 6x minus 5y. Now in this case, it turned out to a whole number, and so you don't have to put anything in front of the x. Technically, you could put a 1, but you would get the same thing, x minus 2y. And those are the factors for that trinomial. So again, you can FOIL it to make sure you get your original back. So this is factoring trinomials with two variables using the Kim trick.